Hello, my friends. I hope you're all doing good and your walk is light. Today, we're going to talk about programming and conditioning. I woke up the other morning with a dream that was still sitting on my chest. It was a wedding. I was there in the middle of it. It's the kind of dream where you are more of a witness than a participant, watching things unfold with that strange half logic that dreams operate on. In the dream, at the wedding, a little boy had been given a job. He was to pass out slices of the wedding cake to the guests. A small, serious responsibility that I'm sure he was proud of. I mean, you could tell. If you've ever been to a wedding, you've seen the little boy pass out the rings and the little girls do the flowers. They're proud of it. But I don't think he was given the signal yet. The cue hadn't come. And in that gap between having the cake and being allowed to present it, in that small, unsupervised moment, I noticed in the dream that he leaned down and licked the frosting off one of the pieces. And I laughed in my dream. And I laugh now thinking about it, because I'm sure I would have done the same thing. He did it just like that, quick, instinctive, completely joyful. But he was immediately scolded for it. I woke up a moment later, and I was thinking about that boy all day. Because what he did wasn't wrong, not in any real sense. He didn't ruin anything. He didn't hurt anyone. He was a child drawn towards sweetness, doing what children do. Hell, what I still do at 51. Don't worry, I don't lick everybody's cake, but sometimes at birthday parties, But see, the world around him didn't see a child following natural impulse. It was a transgression. It saw it as a transgression, what he did. It saw a disorder. It saw something that needed to be corrected before it spread. Now remember, this is a dream, but it was a very lucid dream. I remember it clearly, and it was only that. I don't even remember what the wedding, who it was for or anything. I just remember this one part. And so we can act as if it's real, because there's been many instances where something like this, where you're told you're a good boy or you're a bad boy, depending on what you do. So I started talking through the dream, turning it over, and somewhere in the middle of that conversation, a sentence surfaced that felt like it had always been waiting for this discussion. And that sentence was a statement that's been built into not only me, but most likely built into you. And that is, your impulses are corrupt. Your curiosity is a threat. And your joy, it must be earned. That's not philosophy that anyone announces out loud. It's more like water. It's like water that you don't notice it until you're already soaked through. Because see, someone handed you a story before you were ever old enough to ask where that story came from. And the story was, you were born broken. That was the first thing they needed you to believe. Not flawed, but literally, you were born broken. Fundamentally, irreparable, in the need of something outside of yourself to fix what you were born being. And from that one story, everything else followed. It's the architecture of managed guilt when you look at it. Now, I didn't grow up in a deeply religious house, but I grew up in a deeply religious neighborhood. Protestant kids, Catholic kids, all of them carrying the same basic weight, just wrapped in different packaging. I watched my friends navigate confession, confirmation, youth group guilt, the whole machinery of it. And then later on, when I fell into the trap and became a born-again Christian myself, I also felt it from the inside. The way that genuine curiosity got reframed as questioning God. The way that asking hard questions wasn't treated as faith, seeking understanding. It was treated as a warning sign. Spiritual immaturity at best, and rebellion at worst. That phrase kept showing up in different rooms, dressed in different clothes, but always the same body underneath. The flesh is weak. It didn't mean your body gets tired. It meant you wanting something was suspect. That the part of you that reaches toward pleasure, towards curiosity, towards joy, that part couldn't be trusted. It needed to be supervised. The Catholic version, it's not any softer than the Protestant version. If anything, it had a better architecture. Confession was a genius invention when you think about it. Not because it offered forgiveness, but because it institutionalized self-surveillance. You didn't just feel guilty, you reported your guilt to an authority, received a prescription from that authority, and were sent back into the world already accumulating your next debt. The cycle wasn't a bug, it was the whole design. Both traditions, and I say this respect for people inside them, many of whom I love, but their social gravity around a single premise, that your natural self is the problem, is horrendously lucrative for them and horrible for yourself. Because what they're telling you again is, your impulses are corrupt. Your curiosity is a threat, and your joy must be earned. Think about that for a second. The problem is, it's not just religion. It's a blueprint. Here's what I've come to understand. Religion didn't invent this mechanism. It perfected it. The state, the schools, the corporations, they've all been running the same play. Think about that little boy in the frosting. What was he really? Curious, present, drawn towards something sweet and real in front of him. That's not a character flaw, my friends. That's a child being alive. Now think about how a child is educated. Not what they're taught, but how. Sit still, raise your hand, wait. Don't speak until spoken to. Don't ask why. See, the natural impulse of a child is to move, to question, to want to understand everything at once. And from the first day of kindergarten, that impulse is treated as a disorder. We don't call it original sin in schools. We call it ADHD. We call it behavioral issues. The language changes over the years. The diagnosis changes over the years. But the underlying message doesn't. Something in you needs to be corrected. And by the time you're an adult, you've internalized the correction so thoroughly you don't even feel the cage anymore. You police yourself. You preemptively suppress the thought before anyone has to suppress it for you. You feel guilty for wanting too much, for resting too long, and for laughing too loud at a joke that others are not laughing as loud at. You have become your own warden. And it doesn't help when society comes into it. Because groupthink wears morality like a costume. And what makes this so effective and so hard to name is that it doesn't usually come at you as control, it comes at you as ethics. The community tells you what is good, and more importantly, what is shameful. The shame isn't private, it's public. It's enacted in the group. You know what you're allowed to want because you've watched what happens to people who want the wrong things. They get quiet, they get cut off, or they get prayed for, which is the spiritual version of being voted off the island when you think about it. I watched this in recovery spaces too when I was quitting drinking, which broke something open to me. Rooms full of people who had survived addiction, who had every reason to understand that human beings are complicated and driven by pain that they couldn't always name, and still sometimes, those same rooms would turn on someone for the wrong kind of honesty. For wanting something they weren't supposed to want, for asking the question that disrupted the shared story of, I am an alcoholic or I am a drug addict. The impulse to belong is real. I'm not dismissing that. But belonging that requires you to betray your own perception, that's not community. That's a protection racket. Now, when we bring in the state, well, The state made it official. Why do you think the Romans so easily accepted Christianity as their state religion? Control. Governments didn't have to work hard to extend the logic. The population was already trained. The citizen society that believes its own desires are inherently suspect is a society that will ask permission before living, that will frame its own freedom as something dangerous, that will, in moments of collective fear, hand the keys over to somebody else. Not because they were forced to, but because some deep down voice said, "You probably can't be trusted with them anyways, better hand them over." We've all watched this in real time. Every expansion of surveillance, every erosion of privacy, every law that manages behavior more than it prevents harm, it lands softly on a population that already believes human nature needs to be managed. The theology became the policy. The sermon becomes the statute, the law. You're not being watched because you did something wrong. You're being watched because wanting is treated as something wrong, as probable cause. And here's what they're protecting. And here's the thing that took me years to understand. If your impulses are corrupt, then the authority that defines corruption is indispensable. You can't trust yourself, so you need them. You can't interpret the text of the Bible, so you need the priest. You can't make decisions, so you need the leader. You can't know what's good for you, so you need the institution or the algorithm to tell you. The doctrine of human brokenness isn't primarily theology. It's a market, and the product being sold is legitimacy. The legitimacy of the structure that stands between you and your supposedly dangerous inner self. Take away that corruption, and the middleman has nothing to sell. Now, what's the way out? I'm not saying your impulses are all wisdom and enlightenment. I've got 9 years sober. I know what unchecked impulse looks like from the inside. Some of our instincts need to be sat with, examined, and even refused. But there's a difference between discernment and condemnation, between watching your mind with curiosity and treating it like a crime scene. The way out isn't rebellion for its own sake. Burning it all down is just another way of letting someone else's story be the main character. You don't have to turn into an anarchist or a nihilist to believe in any of this. The way out is quieter, more of a dangerous act. And it's deciding that your inner self is worth taking seriously, that your questions, your curiosity, your impulses are legitimate, that your joy doesn't need to be permitted, not because you're perfect, but because the assumption that you're permanently broken has always served someone else's interests more than they served your own. There's a moment, and if you felt this moment, you'll know it, where the guilt doesn't quite land the same way anymore, where you catch yourself mid-apology for existing and you stop, not with anger, just with a kind of tired clarity. Oh, I'm doing it again. I'm policing myself so they don't have to. That moment is the beginning of something. Not the end, not a solution, just a door opening onto a different question. And that question is, what would I reach toward if I didn't start from thinking I was broken? That question won't fit in one of their sermons. It won't survive in one of their committees. It only lives in the space between you and whatever is most honest within you. Which is, I think, exactly why they've always worked so hard to fill that space with noise, to deter you from understanding your own self, your own agency, your own autonomy, your own freedom of choice. The story that your impulses are corrupt, your curiosity is a threat, and your joy is something that must be earned That story is not neutral. It has authors, it has beneficiaries, and it has been handed down through religion, education, politics, and social pressures so many times that most of us can't locate the moment we agreed to it, if we ever did. Because we didn't. You didn't agree to it. You were born into it. The work isn't to become someone without doubt or desire or darkness. The work is to stop outsourcing the interpretation of your own life to systems that profit from your uncertainty and your fear. That's not theology. That's not politics. That's just what it looks like to start taking yourself, your inner self, the God within, seriously. Love you all. Walk in light.